you're like anybody else. Just quit.
Yeah.
But all it takes is a few seconds. Some people a couple minutes, and some people a couple of weeks. But just weigh it out, weigh out the consequence. And like I say, you will not have the answers until you step into that unknown and just go with it.
All
Trust
right.
it.
Leaders Talk, Season 2.
Hello, everybody. Hello and welcome back. It is your favorite time of the week. It's my favorite time of the week. It's time for Leaders Talk. And today with me, and of course, I am, as always, your intrepid host, head of communications here at Leaders Brand, Andrew Dupy. And today with me is a very special guest. It's Dr. Glen Robison. So let me take a second to introduce Glen to you. So Glen is a diplomat in the American Board of Multiple Specialties in podiatry and a board certified in care and podiatric medicine with over 26 years in clinical and surgical experience. He's also a certified Senjutsu practitioner and TFT voice technology at Mythoprapit. Dr. Robinson uses all three of these expertise areas to address deep restrictions in the body that contribute to pain and ailments and help with releasing deep-seated emotional blockages that affect one's health. He currently specializes in prolotherapy and to treat ankle instability, torn ligaments, tendons, and bunions without surgery. He is also Amazon bestseller. He is author of Healthy Dad, Sick Dad, co-author of In Luminary Leadership, and he is an author in the USA National Bestseller Success DNA. And today we'll be talking about Show Them, stepping into the unknown to find the answer. Glen, my audience got to see me finally stumble over a little bit of of an introduction. They can tell that I am not a medical professional, but you are. So with that introduction, though, kind of give us just a second to talk about yourself and especially about Show Them and exactly what Show Them is about.
Well, to your audience, you know how my patients feel when I walk into the room and I'm trying to explain an MRI to them. So that's no big deal. A lot of tongue twisters words. I think they make these words big to make me look smart. So Show Them is an actually it's been a long journey, and it was the book I thought I'd write first, but it came at this time. Healthy Dad, Sick Dad obviously was the first book I wrote, but Show Them had a lot of time spent, seeing which stories, which experiences that I went through in life was important to put in the book. There's a lot that was retracted and not in the book, just due to the length of the book and the time. So it's not a large volume page book, but it does have a lot of content. The content just shares my journey, and what's interesting is the feedback I'm getting from whether it be patients or non-patients, is that they'll say things like, "Man, how did you not quit
Yeah.
in this life journey? And how did you just keep going? I'm amazed that you just kept going. I mean, you could have quit at any moment, and there's multiple levels of looking back on it. I could have easily." And so my response to them is that I think they diagnosed me as having dyslexia or the inability to formulate words. And so I didn't know what the word quit meant literally. I mean, I didn't know how to spell it. In my mind, I thought it was Q-U-I-E-T, but it's actually Q-I-E-T. So I just quiet my mind and just kept persevering, going through
Yeah.
this journey.
And I'm interested too, we'll continue to dig into that, but to kind of back up a little bit just on your background, it's true that you actually are a medical professional, a doctor, and you did not go to college.
I
Or
went to college, just
at that time.
never graduated.
Never graduated. So that's a good question. I think that's going to be something that people are going to immediately say, how in the heck did you do that?
Yeah.
and how did you find a way to actually be able to get to where you are?
Yeah, I'll jump right into that because right now it's a huge discussion on the podiatry platform. There's a website, and you get all these doctors talking about how they're going to recruit new students coming in, and well, do we need to change the requirements, and do we need to do this and make it more simplified and easier? And I follow a discussion, and it's interesting to read their answers and their solutions, and they all state that you have to have a bachelor's degree and before you can get into medical school. That's with anything. And so here I was faced in a university that told me if you do these courses, you will have everything you need to graduate in the spring.
Hmm.
And so I had interviewed with the medical school in December. I had actually got accepted under the notion that I would have my bachelor's degree in the spring. And then I got called into my advisor's office in January and said, "Hey, look, your zoology degree now requires that you have this genetics class and a lab with it." And I says, "Okay, let me sign up this semester." He goes, "You don't understand." He says that class is only offered in the fall.
Hmm.
So I'm looking at this saying, "Oh man, do I have to stay in college for another year for one class?" So I had actually called the board, told my scenario to them, and saying I'm getting all the classes you required of me. And they says, "Well, let's get back. I'll get back with you. The board will meet and discuss this." And so 2 weeks later, chewing off my toenails, losing more hair in my head, and whatever, just sweating it out and stressing about it. They says, "Hey, look, come on out, finish up your physics, finish up your chemistry courses, finish up all the requirements. We understand that this is not common and it's rare. We never accept a student that does not have a bachelor's but come out in the fall." So I did everything. I finished up my courses, and so I showed up to medical school. I had this little name tag that says Rick's College, and that's where I got my associate's degree. So I always tell people I went from an AS degree, skipped the BS, and got a doctorate degree.
I
Uh,
love, I love that because yeah, you did kind of skip the skip the BS, didn't you? Well, yeah, but that's kind of one of the I think defining things about you and what you kind of go into in the book is you're transforming hardship into success. You're taking hardship and you're not using that as an excuse to let you fail because I think a lot of people would have not skipped the BS. I think they would have gone and said, "I'm just gonna waste another entire year of my life for the one class."
mhm.
Or maybe even say, I'm not going to name names, but I have a very close friend of mine who was a professor who didn't get his PhD because of red tape and rigmarole and problems and literally had his dissertation, but he walked away because I don't want to do the BS anymore. I don't want to do the politics anymore. And I always was upset that he did that because he's a brilliant historian. But how do you find the way to turn those kind of hardships into success?
Well, I think the word that comes to mind is regret.
Mm,
Um, and it weighs heavily on my mind. And why that is, I couldn't pinpoint a definite experience right now. I'm sure I could find it, but for instance, when my father passed away 5 years ago, maybe no, 6 years ago, um, I had been working with him for a couple of years, um, and it was the issue of regrets. And he lived his whole life with regrets. He had 9 children, served in the Korean War. I don't know what happened in the Korean War, but he was active duty and spoke very little of it. And I
mm,
know he brought a lot of regrets home, and then that carried over into his family and raising, five sons and 3 daughters, and 6 sons and 3 daughters. They lost a child, but um, the last thing he told me on that I was able to speak with him, he says, "Hey, Glenn," he says, "I have no more regrets." And he explained. I says, "Okay, you're ready to go." And I was ready to. He says, "When are you coming to see me?" And I says, "Well, I'm coming up Friday, and I'll be able to see you." And this is during COVID, so I hadn't
Mhm.
seen him in over a year. And I was in the car driving, and I got a phone call, and my sister had told me he passed away.
Mhm.
So, knowing that he had no regrets leaving this earth life, it was a blessing to me. And I think my mind works heavily. And I go back to, not knowing how to spell quit and
Mhm.
quieting the mind. A lot of times when I'm faced with, okay, I'm sitting in behind the desk of this professor telling me I need this another course and saying, okay, well, what's the worst case scenario? I can stay another year. Is it going to suck? Yes, it's going to suck just to take one course for a whole entire year and then go back in to medical school. So I always says, I always talk to myself and say, and I think I was my biggest cheerleader in my head. And I just says, you got to keep going because if I quit, I know there's something I'm going to regret, a
Yeah.
year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. And I think that that happens with a lot of individuals. And if they just stay with it, that's stepping into the unknown to find those
Mhm.
answers. You almost have to. And it's the answers that you never even imagined that are there because the words you formulate in your mind and head are completely different. And
Yeah.
so I just stayed persistent, and but that I just didn't want to have the regrets of life, saying I walked away from this, and who knows where I would have been had I not even gone into medical school with all the stories I tell in the book, of saving lives and the journeys of medical missions and the promises that I made,
Mhm.
and just so many stories every day with patients. So I'm truly thankful that I'm here.
Yeah. And I can imagine a lot of people are thankful for it. You've done a lot of help for people. And the thing is that, from a perspective, my perspective, so much would have been lost had you quit. I mean, so many things, not just in your life, but we pass on our life to other people.
Yes.
Everyone does. No one lives in a vacuum. No one affects no one. So many things that I think maybe the audience can think about that as ways to not quit is to think about all of the things not just affecting you, but what you can pass on and how much damage you could do not to yourself, but to others that you don't touch. If you say, "Yeah, I'm going to walk away from this. I'm not going to get, you need a bachelor's. Heck with it. I'm going."
Yeah, you just take a pause, take a breather, and quiet the mind. Listen to the other side, not the side that's telling you, you're like anybody else. Just quit.
Yeah.
But all it takes is a few seconds. Some people a couple minutes, and some people a couple weeks.
Mm.
But just weigh it out, weigh out the consequence. And like I say, you will not have the answers until you step into that unknown and just go with it.
All
Trust
right.
it.
What are some other stories that come from the book that you might think that the audience might want to hear that kind of connects them a little bit more to essentially the way that you're able to turn things into positive?
Um, I think the one that stands out the most was in high school,
Mhm.
and that was way before the college experience. I had it's always recommended that you take this ACT test to get into college, the college aptitude test to see where you stand. And so if you take it your junior year, you can get 2 extra points.
Mhm.
That's what it was when I was there. I don't know if it is today, but you're still taking it. Kids
Yeah.
still take it to get in there. And so I remember I was on a track meet and I had stayed overnight, permission from the coach and my parents that I was just going to take this test the next morning. And so I was in St. George, Utah, and finished up the track meet, got my hotel, and I don't even think I was studying. I didn't know what to study. And I got up in the morning, went and took this test, and I'm like trying to read these answers. I mean, read the questions, and they're like, what I still remember one talking about a frog and what does it sweat, and I was like exogenic or endogenic, and I had no clue about these questions. And so I was like A B C, oh, C sounds good. And so I went through the whole test and I was like, okay, um, I'm like, we'll find out how I did. And everybody in my class was like, yeah, I got a 17, I got a 24, I got a, all these scores. And I go, Glenn, what did you get? I'm like, I don't know. They haven't told me yet. And then so over the loudspeaker, and I was sitting in my English class and it says, Glen Robison, could you report to the office? And everybody looked back in the back where I was sitting in the back corner, where you could always find me. And they're like, oh, you're in trouble. So I get up and walk down the long hallway and get into the office, and the secretary is like, "Oh, okay, Coach Munson. He was the football coach, but he's also the high school counselor, and I think he's the most feared man on campus."
Mm.
Uh, and I walked into his door and kind of tapped his door, and he said, "Come on in." And I went to go sit down. He says, "You don't need to sit down. This won't take long." He says, you just got the lowest score in the state of Utah and the fifth lowest percentile in the nation. He says, you should go be a farmer like your dad or go to a Bull Tech school. Good luck getting into college. And he handed me the paper, didn't even tell my score. He says, get back to class. And so I'm walking down the hallway looking at this piece of paper, and it said a 7. I'm like, okay, lucky number 7. I was like, I didn't tell anybody what score I got, because everybody was like all these other numbers. And so I was like, man, I can take it my senior year, which I did. And I got a 7 again. And so um, I interviewed with universities, and the one university that laughed at me, and I'll tell you what it is, and it was BYU.
Mm.
They laughed at me and they says, "You'll never step foot on our campus with that type of score." I says, "Okay." So I found a college that um, didn't require ACT exam testing, and I got into the college. And I actually failed out because I took too many classes and it was overwhelming. Um, to backtrack a little bit, I got a $50 scholarship for being the senior class president. So that gave me enough to buy a book, but I lost the scholarship. It was already spent in the book anyway. So I took 2 years off and collected my thoughts and did some service work, and then got back into college. And then I had a professor tell me it doesn't matter what happened in your past, this is what you need to do now. And it was the first real person in education that believed in me,
Mm.
from a professor teacher standpoint. I was like, man, okay, it doesn't matter what happened in my past, I can do this. And so then I went with it. So
Yeah. And that's in there, and there's a lot of compassion in that and what he did for you there.
yeah,
As an educator myself, I hate it when people are the discouragement is not my thing, because it only requires a little bit of encouragement. It only requires somebody to believe in you and say you can do it to really change things. And I think that you go into in the book a lot about the idea of compassion being something that's a touchstone that drives you. So maybe you can say a little bit about that.
I think I get that from my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that day that it was the day that I didn't make the basketball team. I worked so hard at it. I dribbled the basketball every day on dirt roads. I would sit out. I'd be out there on the dirt court in my driveway shooting foul shots, and my goal was to wear out a rubber basketball every summer. And I lived dream basketball. Asthma kind of got in the way for a lot, but I think it was what kind of helped me just persevere through that, because I'd dribble a basketball and try to create an asthma attack and see if I could go another block further or another mile further. And I remember the day that I was looking at the list on the board of making the basketball team, and I'd been cut my junior year, and then we got this new coach that was on the Phi Flamma Jam with Clyde Drexler and Kim Olajuwon, and he was actually my coach. He came in, and I thought, okay, this is my year because I'm going to be on that basketball team. My name wasn't on that list. I went home, got into bed, pulled the covers over my head, and says, I'm done. I'm not going back to that school. And here I am, the senior class president. I They took the one thing away from me that I loved the most, and that was basketball. And my mom came in, and it's going to come back to passion here, trust me. But she told me, get out of that bed and go back to school. And I went back to school and I sat in the class that I was a tutor for in geography. The teacher actually stood up, walked out, left the class because he was the assistant basketball coach, and he didn't show up the rest of the period. And I don't think he could face me and explain why I got cut. The head coach never showed up to his class either, and there was no teacher for that day. So where does the compassion come in? Even though my mom told me to go back to school, there was compassion in that. She showed me a way to love your way through things and
Mm.
to look at that life does not end at um, your uh, when your desire doesn't meet your standards. Um, and it's through finding other ways, finding quiet in that mind and listening. And I think that I developed a great relationship with my God that I prayed above every day and developed an intuition. And if you want to learn more about compassion than anything, start reading about Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
And not to get religious here, but he is the central focus of my entire life and existence. Without him, that there's nothing that I don't exist. So I developed a real love, and I think that for a higher being that I haven't even met, and I think it came from my mom, and she was just loving, caring, and even though she was firm on some things that she knew she had to do, it um, I'm thankful to that for getting me out of that bed and going back to school. So
Yeah. I mean, well, Glenn, you really did show them. Because look where you are now. You know, we're going to circle back later. We're going to talk a little bit about healthy dad, sick dad, because I want to go into a little bit in a future episode about your about your medical profession and some of the things that you've done because there's so much that we could do. You know, the time is always is a limiting factor here. But I want to give the audience like a golden nugget, something that you want them to take away from this, maybe that we haven't touched on, just so that they have something to prepare themselves before they actually pick up your book.
you know, I think there's and I thought heavily on this, and I think it's changed over the last couple of days. I think there's a big difference between AI, artificial intelligence, and intuition. And I think that AI does help us in today's realm. Had I had AI back in the days, I don't think I would have relied on my knees
Mhm.
and understood intuition and understood that when somebody talks to me in a different way and it's really strong in my gut, then I need to do that. And I can share two experiences. Just, I mean, stands out. I there was one patient that I noticed I could sense something was wrong, but I finished up with him and I walked out of the room and something told me go back and talk to him. So even with all my schedule and everything, I walked back in that room, sat down, I go, "What's going on?" He says, and he was kind of taken back. He goes, "Wow." He says, "They just diagnosed me of having cancer." And I says, "Okay, what's your biggest fear?" He says, "I don't know what it's like to die." And I says, "Okay, that's legitimate. And a lot of people have a fear of death. But what if I told you I died in medical school and I know what's on the other side and you don't have to fear it?" And so I spent some time talking to him. And every time I talked to him, he'd ask me more questions. He eventually did pass on. But he said one thing to me. He says, "I don't know why you came back, but I was heavily in my mind wanting to find an answer. And when you came back in the room and told me about your death experience, it gave me peace. And now I can handle this. I can step on to the other side." And and he did pass away, but he told me that experience, and I know that he left this life like my father with no regrets and had a peace of mind. And so when you step onto the other side, like I did for that brief, sharp moment, it doesn't have to be fearful. And it's a incredible experience. But that's a whole nother discussion on what happens in the death experience and all that stuff. But just intuition, if people rely on AI nowadays, when are you going to find that really true source of information, the true source of knowledge and wisdom? And it comes from intuition. And it's your inners speaking to you from a higher source. And it's more powerful, it's more knowledgeable than any AI computer, any AI smartphone that can give to you. And you just have to have the ability to quiet your mind and listen to it, and the answers are there.
Yeah. And I can see it every day. I can see it as an educator. I see it all the time. That'd be a rabbit hole we can go down, a very deep one on that one too, because I'm watching entire generations lose that part of themselves because they're relying on something else to tell them. Well, Glenn, how can our audience find out more about you?
You can go to my website, that's Dr. Glen, Glen Robison, ROBISON.com. That's my website. You can see what I do in clinic, and then also I'm on Instagram at Dr. Glen Robison, and I post a lot. Well, probably not as much what other people post, but I do post what I eat for the Healthy Dad, Sick Dad, and some celebrations and things like that. So those are the two main places you can find me.
Fantastic. Well, Glenn, we're going to have you back on. I think that we have a lot more to talk about. But thank you so much for your time today. And I'm looking forward to round two.
Thank you.